Without further ado, here are major stories that should be in the news, but that conveniently aren't getting much press. MS-13. Have you guys heard about MS-13? MS-13's motto is Mata, Viola, Controlla, or Kill, Rape, Control. These guys are behind egregious murders, drugs, human trafficking, extortion, and so much more.
So to be initiated into the MS-13, you really have to pretty much be deemed crazy enough to even join. Reports range from having to kill someone in a rival gang, leading gang rapes on women.
After you've done that, you're not even in yet. You have to be jumped in by enduring a beating by some of the strongest gang members for 13 seconds, counted very slowly by the gang leaders. If you're a woman, reports say to be jumped in, you have to endure being gang raped by 6 members of the gang.
So they go into sanctuary neighborhoods and force kids to join. So Trump called MS-13 animals for a number of reported grisly murders, and mainstream media said he was racist.
Together, we're going to restore safety to our streets and peace to our communities. And we're going to destroy the vile criminal cartel MS-13 and many other gangs. But MS-13 is particularly violent. They don't like shooting people because it's too quick. It's too fast. I was reading one of these animals was caught and explaining they like to knife them and cut them and let them die slowly because that way it's more painful and they enjoy watching that much more. These are animals.
So what do you think of the Trump policy now? He's deporting Salvadorans. He's really going after MS-13.
Karma's a bitch and that's coming back, you know? Yeah. We have done a lot of, I'm not gonna say me personally, but a lot of people in general, you know, have done a lot of hurtful shit to innocent people. And I think that people got tired of it, you know?
Jose joined MS-13 in the US at just 13 years old. He was deported back directly from a US prison. But since he's not wanted for crimes in El Salvador, he's being treated like any other deportee, released back into the street. He's convinced he'll be killed any day by police or rival gangs. And he thinks his best chance to protect himself is getting straight back into the game.
For too long, Washington has gone after law-abiding gun owners while making life easier for criminals, drug dealers, traffickers, and gang members. MS-13, you know about MS-13? It's not pleasant for them anymore, folks. It's not pleasant for them anymore. That's a bad group.
President Trump took a question about the gang MS-13. As he has before, the president expressed his thoughts on the subject bluntly.
We're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
Well, if anything, that's a mild description. Dogs are animals, and a lot of them sleep on the bed. You wouldn't want to be anywhere near MS-13. They traffic in drugs, weapons, and human beings, young girls. Unlike animals, they kill for fun, often with machetes. They terrorize the poor and the vulnerable. They've made El Salvador the most dangerous country in the world. There is literally no defending them, and yet the left is defending them. Trump evokes an ugly history of dehumanization. So the president is a Nazi for criticizing a violent street gang. For her part, over at the House, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi raced to the nearest microphone to defend the dignity of MS-13. Watch this.
We're all God's children. There's a spark of divinity in every person on earth. And so when the President of the United States says about undocumented immigrants, these aren't people, these are animals, you have to wonder, does he not believe in the spark of divinity, the dignity and worth of every person?
President Trump has highlighted his administration's efforts against the MS-13 gang. So, of course, the left now supports MS-13. Vox.com has published a video portraying the gang as a bunch of cute teenagers who ride bikes, listen to music, and work after-school jobs.
When you think of the street gang MS-13, what do you see? Maybe something like this, or this. But what if I told you the typical MS-13 gang member in the US actually looks like one of these young men on Facebook? They're around 18 years old. They like selfies and memes about the Joker.
The number one is self-admitted. So they'll be all tattooed up, MS-13, I'm self-admitted. They do the signs. When they get arrested, they ask them, are you gang affiliate? Yeah, I'm MS-13.
What is the gang's MO?
kill, rape, control.
And the young men in these photos have all been charged with or convicted of horrific crimes.
MS-13. Kidnapped, shot, and burned in his car by MS-13 gang members.
The gang has committed 27 murders.
Taking advantage of illegal immigrants.
Machetes?
That's their favorite weapon of choice.
MS-13 has become notorious for committing some brutal crimes. But that's not all we hear about them.
MS-13 takes advantage of glaring loopholes in our immigration laws. Pouring into the country.
Violated our borders.
Open borders. Let MS-13 all over our country. Not with me. We're taking them out by the thousands.
But here's the thing. MS-13 was born right here in the United States.
There to protect themselves from American gang violence, young Salvadorans formed MS-13.
This is 100% an American-born gang.
It comes out of the Salvadoran immigrant community in Los Angeles.
You know, a group of teenagers hanging out, smoking pot, listening to rock music.
I've been reporting on Long Island for a year, and the MS-13 that I'm seeing on the ground there has almost nothing in common with the MS-13 as portrayed by the government.
For one, the Trump administration presents MS-13 as a drug cartel.
The drug smugglers and the vile criminal cartels like MS-13.
But that's not really the case.
MS-13 is not really involved with the international drug trade. The MS-13 members that I've been following are working after-school jobs. They're living with their parents. They get around Long Island on bicycles because they can't afford cars.
But it's been classified as a transnational criminal organization. The Obama-era Treasury Department put the group on a list of sanctioned organizations with groups like the Mexican Zetas and the Japanese Yakuza. But
the organization doesn't have that kind of sophistication to really play with the major players.
Yet MS-13 alarmism has persisted for decades.
MS-13 has the potential to be far more dangerous than gangs like the Bloods and Crips.
One of the fastest growing gangs in our nation.
It's a fact. MS-13 is the fastest growing gang in the United States.
Even though MS-13 has stuck around, it's not actually growing.
The estimates of MS-13's size in the U.S. have kind of ping-ponged between 5,000 and 10,000 for the last 10 to 15 years.
Well, the FBI recently testified at a congressional hearing that they have intelligence that MS-13, in response to President Trump arresting thousands of MS-13 members, wants to send younger, more violent reinforcements to the United States to build their ranks back up.
And the numbers are overwhelming. We can take a look at this for people at home. There's an estimated 40,000 members worldwide.
Now, with Central American immigrants seeking asylum at the U.S. border, the Trump administration has raised a new concern about MS-13 posing as fake families.
The kids are being used by pawns. Those are traffickers, those are smugglers, that is MS-13, those are criminals, those are abusers.
It can be hard to tell who's really in the gang and who's just adopting gang style.
It's not right. She had dreams, she had goals, she had a future.
Kayla Cuevas, just 16 years old, a talented athlete nicknamed the Bullet.
They named her the Bullet because she was so quick.
Sadly unable to escape the violence just outside her door. Kayla and her best friend, Nisa Mickens, savagely murdered just blocks from home, September 13, 2016. Attacked with baseball bats and a machete, investigators say. Victims of La Mara Salvatrucha, the gang better known as MS-13.
Another homicide was a quadruple homicide where 4 boys were chopped into little pieces in a park in Central Islip. This is an extremely dangerous gang. I would submit probably one of the most dangerous street gangs that we have in the United States.
But sadly, other people have learned the hard truth about it. Rob Mickens' daughter was murdered by MS-13. He met with the president today. He joins us tonight. Rob, thank you for coming on tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tucker.
What's your reaction to this, to the controversy around the president's description of MS-13 as animals?
He was actually being very polite about it. You know, he can't really say what's on his mind because people like to take things out of context, but what they did is a savage act, and he nailed it right on the head by calling them animals.
What happened to your daughter?
Well, my daughter, Nisa Mickens, was attacked the eve of her 16th birthday. She was walking back with her best friend, Kayla, back to Kayla's house, and these vicious animals approached them and decided to kill both of them over a dispute that happened in a high school between Kayla and one of the members of MS-13.
That's exactly right. When they commit a murder, they do it to send a message.
An MS-13 gang member is under arrest this morning, accused of murdering a man on a New York City subway platform. Shot him right in the face a number of times, all caught on camera in broad daylight.
MS-13, these are animals. They're coming into our country. We're getting them out.
These are not people. These are animals. The President of the United States.
We're here at a Bartolina in the capital city. It's a detention center. It's where the arrested wait until conviction, at which point they move on to one of the city's bigger prisons. We tried to go to one of those prisons today, but we're advised it was just too dangerous to go there. In fact, one of our security guys said if we went there, we'd have to throw away our clothes because it was so filthy. It would be toxic to keep them.
But one person who seems to have no problem with the gang is writer Rob Rousseau, who says he'd rather his daughter dated an MS-13 member rather than a Republican.
Calling people animals is not a good thing.
He insulted us once again. So here's what I think. I think clearly the president wants a war against Latinos.
Well, look, that's not the kind of language I generally use to describe people. But in this case, I think there are a lot of people in our country who might agree with that characterization. This MS-13 gang is extremely violent. They're responsible for deaths in our country, for a number of violent crimes.
Do you think it helps when someone like Vox.com, which has a lot of influence on the left, basically says, oh, sure, there's like some people who kill people in it, but there's a lot of just nice, cute kids there going along with it, as they might with any after-school activity?
No, it minimizes the threat that this street gang poses, and it minimizes the situation that these communities find themselves in. MS-13 targets young Hispanic boys in neighborhoods that are underserved. Right. It is incredibly important that we target these gang members with aggressive law enforcement tactics, and that we also invest in gang prevention and intervention strategies so that we prevent them from recruiting more members.
This is a quote from the Epoch Times article on MS-13. Nissa Mickens' body had been discovered with such significant trauma to the face and head that she was almost unrecognizable, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Eastern District of New York. She had been attacked with baseball bats and a machete.
So you may be asking, why is this so important? MS-13 is one of the largest criminal organizations in our country. It estimates numbers between 6,000 to 10,000 in the United States, with more than 60,000 operating internationally between the countries of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala.
Thousands of immigrants from Central America are currently traveling together en route to the United States. Most of those making the journey are traveling by foot, and many are from the city of San Pedro Sula in Honduras, which has one of the highest murder rates in the world.
Women with children who are fleeing violence, sexual violence, domestic violence, and the scourge of gangs in El Salvador and Honduras.
After some of these grisly murders happened, Trump called these gang members animals, as we stated before, but the mainstream media said that it was, quote, inhumane to call any human an animal, and the reporting on this issue has been very limited.
Ask yourself why again. What happens if data comes out on this gang, where they're coming from, and how they get into the country? It unfortunately would lead the media to talk about an issue they've been railing on Trump for: immigration.
No one here at this show would ever say immigration is a bad thing for anyone wanting to come into this country. But facts and issues have to be looked at objectively. This has nothing to do with any race, only character. Have you guys heard of the NXIVM sex cult? Okay, on their website, they say they're basically a self-improvement philosophy to help you answer, quote, Important questions about what it means to be human. I mean, just look at this website. It totally looks legit.
Well, recently several people associated with this were arrested. The court documents talk about child trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, testing weird drugs on children without consent, to which many of them got sick. I mean, how does this line up with what we just looked at this website?
The court docs say that they were accused of showing their subjects videos of people being brutally murdered, including a Nazi stomping a black man's head until it exploded, dismembering 3 women with a machete. I mean, they're showing this to their subjects. In a reported video, they showed a man where they cut out part of his brain and forced him to eat it. The guy must have been still alive because they knew which part to take out.
Let's try them, please.
I would really like some.
It is good.
Several people were arrested on serious charges. I mean, I don't know how you can get more serious than that, but yeah. First was the doctor running it named Brandon Porter. Second one was Allison Mack, who many of us know from her part in the show Smallville.
The most recent arrest was of Claire Bronfman. Bronfman is said to have funded NXIVM at a minimum of $150 million.
Upon further investigation, Allison Mack and other very major stars seem to be connected to this. If you go to frankreport.com, they've been doing the most work we've seen that has been exposing this.
The list of celebrity names involved with this is getting large. What will happen if the mainstream media started digging in? And what more would it uncover? Is this hitting on the tip of a huge iceberg?
What you got? What you got? What you got?
Witness Mark Vicente revealed that tens of thousands of dollars were funneled through NXIVM to help support the Clinton campaign for president.
So NXIVM claimed to be this self-help, self-improvement organization, and they offered a host of expensive workshops that you could take, that you would spend $5,000 and take their intensive programs to learn to, help reach your personal and professional goals. As people climbed higher in this organization and got more involved in it, they started to become privy to another side of the organization. Eventually, what became the focus of the FBI's investigation was this secret sorority, a secret group of a women's group within the organization that the women said that they were being instructed in that group to have sex with Keith Raniere. In fact, many high-ranking members of the organization who were in it for years didn't realize what was happening in the inner circles of this group, that Keith Raniere was having sex with underage girls, that he was committing wire fraud and immigration fraud and forced labor.
Allison Mack, the story involving her.
That's right. She has been charged with sex trafficking for her alleged role in that self-help group, and we're now learning she's working on a plea deal and she may be cooperating with prosecutors. Take my hand.
She's the actress best known for playing a young Superman's best friend on Smallville.
I can explain later. I did what I had to do.
But this morning, Allison Mack is due in court, facing sex trafficking charges after being accused of involvement in helping to recruit women as alleged sex slaves for a secret sorority within an organization called NXIVM, based out of Albany, New York. Keith Raniere, the leader of NXIVM, is facing charges including sex trafficking and forced labor conspiracy. Raniere and Mack seen together in this video.
So one would say authenticity is being as you are and expressing as you are.
I don't know why. That makes me want to cry. It's beautiful.
Former member Sarah Edmondson said women were forced to sign confidentiality agreements and branded with the symbol incorporating Raniere's initials without any anesthesia.
It was a horror movie. It was the most inhumane, horrific way to treat anybody.
Actress Catherine Oxenberg, best known for her role in the 80s hit Dynasty, says her daughter India told her she was branded by the group.
He finally needs to be held accountable for every single woman and child that he's ever harmed, abused, exploited.
In this trial, we've heard from a dozen former members of the group. One of them, a Mexican national, said that she was confined to a room for 2 years, that they had withheld her documents. She was not able to leave the room, let alone the country, because she committed an ethical breach. She had a crush on someone that was not Keith Raniere. We also learned that he was grooming underage girls. In fact, this woman who was confined, her sister, was in a sexual relationship with Keith Raniere when she was just 15 years old. And in fact, we learned in the trial that Keith Raniere not only conducted, was engaged in this kind of illegal activity, but he tried to normalize it within the community.
Some former recruits testified they were coerced into having sex with Raniere. They were also kept on starvation diets and even branded with his initials. Raniere was revered by the group as the smartest man in the world.
Here's the thing. I've been shot at because of my beliefs.
Right.
I've had to make choices. Should I have bodyguards? Should I have them armed or not?
Right.
I've had people killed because of my beliefs, and because of their beliefs, and because of things that I've said. And I'm mindful of that.
An indictment against both Mack and Raniere says they knowingly and intentionally conspired to recruit, entice, harbor, patronize, and solicit persons. It goes on to say they engaged in such acts knowing that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion would be used to cause such persons to engage in one or more commercial sex acts. In a letter posted last fall on NXIVM's website, Raniere said there is no merit to the allegations that we are abusing, coercing, or harming individuals. These allegations are most disturbing to me as nonviolence is one of my most important values.
A federal jury in Brooklyn today found NXIVM leader Keith Raniere guilty on all counts.
The jury deliberated less than 5 hours before reaching their verdict. Guilty of racketeering, guilty of conspiracy, wire fraud, and sex trafficking.
Claire Bronfman, the heiress to the Seagram liquor fortune, walked out of federal court today after pleading guilty to conspiracy and fraud charges.
Okay, next, opioids crisis. So I'm sure most of you already know what the most addictive drug out there is. Okay, so if it wasn't clear before, guys, the drug we're talking about is heroin, obviously. Did you know that opioid overdoses have become the #1 cause of death for Americans under 50? Last year, there were over 70,000 deaths in the U.S. according to the usdrugabuse.gov. Man, that's rough.
Yeah, it was intense.
Not to mention that heroin now comes laced with something called fentanyl, which makes the drug 50 to 100 times stronger than normal heroin.
These drug flows are rampant, and President Trump is trying to stop it, and of course he's been talking a lot about it.
Yeah, but again, for some reason, the media is saying Trump is racist for targeting the cartels in his speeches. Meanwhile, these cartels are sending in new types of opioids with fentanyl, which is killing people. That's exactly how Prince died.
So here's a quote from Jeff Sessions in a speech he made to law enforcement officers. A police officer in eastern Ohio suffered an overdose after brushing what he thought was white powder from his uniform after a routine traffic stop.
Did you guys just hear that? He brushed his hand over the powder and had an overdose. Even if you're against Trump, why would you use an issue like opioids, something that horrible that's targeting and destroying so many people, to push an agenda? Next is the Awan scandal. A guy named Imran Awan leaves a laptop with a letter to prosecutors, his house ID card and driver's license in a phone booth. Capitol Hill police find the bag and seize it according to their report.
One of the major defining things about the laptop is that it has the login rep DWS, the initials of Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Then, during a televised hearing on May 18th, 2017, Debbie Wasserman Schultz actually threatened the Capitol Police chief in an attempt to get it back. She even went as far as to hire a lawyer to prevent prosecutors from looking at what was on the laptop.
Then, all of a sudden, she turns around in August of 2017 and claims, "This was never my laptop. I have never seen that laptop. I don't know what's on that laptop."
So you guys might be asking, what the heck is going on and who is this guy? Well, Aman had been a part of a group of about 5 IT workers paid $7 million by Congress since 2004.
His family was hired, along with him having little to no IT experience, to handle 44 Democrats' sensitive personal information, including emails, calendars, constituent data, personal files, etc.
Yeah, seem weird yet? Found the server, excessive amount of logins, the sensitive information on those servers to prove useful, sensitive information on those servers other entities around the world, to companies
when investigations started,
other entities around the world.
When investigations started, after one of these Awan servers named it as evidence, and after the Inspector General
when Awan tried to leave the country, he was arrested at the airport. When Awan tried to leave the country, he was arrested at the airport, and he and his wife were indicted for. Wait for it. That's like the political version of the weather balloon when someone sees a UFO. The political version of the weather balloon when someone sees a UFO.
Okay.